Well, welcome, moms, to another episode of Moms Winning at Work. And we have a feisty conversation to talk about today, a feisty topic, I would say. Feedback, asking for it, receiving it, and then also when it's time to move on. Remember, we are combining kind of HR evergreen kind of topics with feedback that we heard from you on the survey. And so we're trying to combine the two topics. We're talking about feedback, but then also when is it time to move on? I am Cynthia Alfaro from Moms Winning. And today I have my wonderful co-host, as I always do. Thank you so much, Tangela. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tangela Reed of Talent Ready. Pleasure to be here as always. Looking forward to this
Yay.
discussion.
Okay, so before we get into it, moms, we thank you for tapping in, listening. Remember to subscribe, like, share, not only Moms Winning, but Talent Ready. We create this space to be able to share, exchange, and build this world together with you. This is free HR advice from two HR experts to help us navigate the workspace together, because our experiences combined, we have lots of years of HR experience, but then we also have our own personal experience of being a working mom, which is terribly hard. So, so that's the genesis of this whole thing that we're doing right now. So moms, as you're watching, share, comment, like, and say, those are my girls. Okay, appreciate it. So let's first get into feedback. Why don't you kick us off, Tangela?
So feedback. I feel like this is a topic that we consider a gift, right? Like when you get feedback, you should consider it to be a gift, but it is really hard. It is really difficult, like in the workplace. So I spend quite a bit of time coaching managers through giving feedback and then also taking calls from employees, associates who may have received feedback and the conversation just didn't go well. So in general, I think we all want to do well. We all like to feel good, but giving feedback on both ends, the receiver and the giver, is just uncomfortable. And statistics show that when you receive feedback, you know, your heart rate goes up. It's like you're literally, in some cases, having like an anxiety attack. And it's not easy for managers either. So we've talked a lot about things like goal setting. We've talked a lot about performance management in that process. And I think when you're getting feedback, one of the things that we talked about doing your weekly check-ins is getting feedback and how to kind of receive it. So don't avoid feedback is the first thing that I would say. One of the easy ways to kind of take control of that process is to ask for feedback. So when you think about self-awareness, when you think about your goal of being a great employee, taking control is just, you know, kind of putting it out there. Like, how did I do? How am I doing? And instead of being broad in that question, I would say try your best to be very specific. So let's say you finished a project. That's an instant time during the project, but especially right after, to just say, you know, how did that go? Or maybe you're leading a meeting, asking not only your manager, but your colleagues and people who are a part of it, stakeholders, how did you think that went? And it doesn't even have to be when you're leading a project. It can also be just your participation. So how are you showing up on a regular basis, right? When you walk into a meeting, do people recognize that you're there? Do they feel like you're contributing? Do you want to say more, but for some reason you're not speaking up? Getting self-awareness and or getting a better idea of being more self-aware includes asking people for feedback so that you can hear how you're being received and how you're showing up on a regular basis. So I've said a lot so far, so I'm just going to stop there and see if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I think next to public speaking, this is like one of those topics where people are like, no, thank you. But in actuality, it's that obstacle that we really have to like hold and understand, like the way past it is through it. You can't
Yeah.
go around it. You can probably with costs associated with it. And I think as I entered into corporate America in the early 2000s, guys, um, I always heard the phrase feedback is a gift, feedback is a gift. And I would be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm trying to absorb that. But what do you mean? And also, how come it doesn't feel like a gift at times? So definitely reframing it is good. Like, so if I were to, well, let's just talk about really quick. There's constructive feedback. Those
Hmm.
are like, as if you were an actor or an actress, you get notes every time you go through rehearsal, right? Your director gives you notes like, here's what needs to be corrected. So there's that constructive feedback. And then there's good feedback, like, hey, you nailed it. Here's how
Praise, yeah.
specifically. So we gravitate to like, tell me something good, right? But it's the constructive side that sometimes, especially when it's not delivered well,
Right.
sometimes falls kind of deep and hard into our spirits. So we understand that managers don't always deliver it well.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about seeing past the maybe the capsule that it comes in or the packaging, and how to change our mindset
Yeah.
that we can receive it for our good.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on one of the things, and I think I started off by saying feedback is a gift, right? It is one of those things when you're thinking about your approach to work. If you are thinking about your career growth and development, you have to consider it to be a gift. Otherwise, people will not be open with you. They likely will not share feedback. If you don't consider it a gift and you are instantly on the defensive, or you make it more uncomfortable for an individual that's likely already uncomfortable, then they will probably shy away from communicating with you. So, in the best of circumstances, you're in a culture, or your workplace is a culture of open communication, transparency, consistent dialogue, constant feedback, right? Like you don't even have to ask for it because you guys are always speaking on a regular basis, and it kind of just goes back and forth. But in those cases where it does become a little bit awkward, one, my first recommendation, which is to ask for it. But then two, if your manager is bad at giving feedback, like give them the benefit of the doubt. Like put in your head, prep yourself for that conversation, especially if it's planned, to be in a posture of just gratitude and acceptance. I do think it makes sense to do a little bit of mind exercise right ahead of conversations like that, even if you are asking for it, so that you, Matthias is trying to like that. Um, Even if you're asking for it, just because you never know what people are going to say. So you don't want to be in a position where you only want feedback when it's something that you're prepared for, when it's something that you want to hear, because you might get something that might surprise you. But again, try your best to think of it as a gift, because truly it is. You're either going to, and I was talking to you about this earlier, Cindy, you're either going to win because you're going to win either way. That's my view. But you're going to win because you are getting praise for everything that you've done already, or you're going to learn. So someone's going to give you a new perspective, something you haven't thought about, and they're going to give you a different way to think about things. And you got to take that and just run with it.
No, that's good. I mean, it is definitely a mindset and
Yep.
a muscle that needs to kind of be trained a bit. Because I think it's just natural for people to get on the defense when they
Yeah.
hear, it's just in our psychology. But the more that we can train our brain to just receive it and focus in on, okay, what's the note? What's the feed? What do I need to improve
Yep.
specifically? And just
Yep.
take that, digest it, and run with it as much as possible. The better
Yeah.
we can just train ourselves to do that, the less cringy it ends up being for us. And we can kind of move past it.
Absolutely. The other thing I think of is thinking about the future, right? Because a lot of times what I see is people, they tend to talk about like the past and what they've done in the past, and they kind of try to defend the position and retract what has happened, what has not happened. Typically, no one's on the same page around exactly what's happened, especially if it's critical feedback. So a good thing to do is kind of position your mind on what's to come. So talk to me about, like, if you're having a conversation with your manager, talk to me about what I can do in the future. When you say this is happening. How do you suggest I approach it in the next project? Something like that, so that you're not focused so much on the past and you can kind of process the words that have been said, and then forward thinking, think about what you'll do in the future to improve and avoid that type of feedback in the
I
next
like
instance.
that. That's really good. I like that. I like that framing. What if I totally disagree with
Yeah.
what my manager says?
Yeah, this is a hard question. Like, if you disagree, I think it's important to understand that self-awareness is important, and it doesn't only include your own view, right? So it's okay for you to disagree, but I think when we were talking earlier, I said it's kind of like that phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's like your performance, the way that you're being perceived, the way that you're showing up, it all depends on who's looking and what perspective they have, and whether or not you guys are all on the same page around what the goal is. So you might not agree, but what you should do is listen with an open mind, open ear, in hopes to, one, exhibit some gratitude that people are able to give you some feedback, because one, everyone doesn't do that. I've definitely seen people be left to fail on their own without getting any feedback at all, right? So your manager kind of leaves you there, knows you're not doing well, says nothing, and you're on a list somewhere for an exit later on. So again, feedback is a gift. You might not agree, but again, thinking about the future, ask some of those questions that will help you in making the next decision. Like, what's your next move going to be? Okay, I understand what you're saying there. Maybe not express that you don't agree right in that moment. I think it's okay to bring up examples and ask for examples, because that definitely helps to bring clarity. What else did we talk about earlier? We talked about making sure you're on the same page around the goal, because I think the other thing is, sometimes you think you're working toward the right thing and you've been working really, really hard, but you've just been going in the wrong direction. So when your manager gives you that feedback, that's really hard to take, because you've been working your behind off. And now you're like, wait a minute, all this time. So a lot of topics that we've talked about before, which are regular check-ins so that you stay on task, having the open communication, creating the trust, all of those things feed into creating a environment where you can get critical feedback and probably not have such a hard time with it. So to get back to your question, if you disagree, take the time to process it, ask questions about the future, go away for a moment so that you have a chance to process it, and then come back. If it's truly something that's like a misunderstanding, because everyone makes mistakes, maybe they literally have made an error in giving you feedback. So I think that's one thing that you can handle. But generally speaking, if they've given you some feedback, take it, listen to it, process it, assess it, keep all of the things that you can learn from, toss out the rest.
Yeah, that's good. And then just a quick kind of side note, if you're a manager, creating a culture of feedback is really important, because then it could just be really slipped into all conversations, right? You can really create a whole culture of feedback. And this is so important. Again, I'm going to use a sports analogy because that's how I think.
Uh-huh.
But basically, if it's every week we're on a basketball team and every week we have a game, we go to the locker room, we sit down as a team, and we look back at how we performed, what went well, what didn't, so that we can get better for the next week. Same thing with Broadway performances,
Like that.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they always are going to have notes. I apply this definitely to any type of working team. These are working teams. And so the more that we can kind of not let time pass us by where we have
Right.
these performances or games and nobody's talking about it on how to get better, the
Yep.
less likely, we're going to be confused or toxic or uncomfortable or not hitting our goals,
That's
essentially.
right. I mean, I really agree with that. The open communication, if you can get into a space that has that, it just helps with everything. I mean, when you think about you and I, right? Like when you have open communication, good relationships, great leadership, um, it it just helps with the dialogue. Everyone is kind of working toward a win. They're not really looking to kind of nitpick at one another. That includes managers. And I think that's what comes into play sometimes when the feedback is really uncomfortable. But statistics show that over 80% of managers do not give feedback. It's a real thing because it can be so uncomfortable. But I love the sports analogy that you just made. And again, the framing is really, really important.
And I would say that's an alarming statistic. And the funny thing is, I feel like the marketing of stuff is so prevalent, like, top performing work teams and coaching and communication, yet in actuality, it's not necessarily happening. So that's an alarming statistic about managers not giving feedback. So I would also I just want to highlight how important it is to give both pieces of feedback. People really think they're doing an outstanding job if they're always griping at their employees with feedback. I give feedback. I let them know when they screw up and stuff like that, right? To make sure that, just like with our children, right? They don't want to hear just all the bad stuff all the time. None of us really do. Okay. Right. We're actually kind of wired the same. It doesn't change. We like to hear the good with the areas of improvement. So really making sure that you're showing the love and at the same time highlighting the areas that need improvement.
Yeah.
It's just really important. And especially as I think about creating an environment where people can optimally perform versus just being, performing in fear or performing under tight scrutiny and all that stuff.
Yeah. Nope. I totally agree.
Okay. So let's transition to the secondary topic, which is, well, when do I move on with a job? And how would I find one? What's your answer?
Yeah. So I think moving on with a job, it has so many factors, at least I would consider. And when I think about engagement for employees in general, like people are usually looking to do meaningful work. They want an environment where they get regular feedback, where they get consistent recognition, especially when they're doing a good job. They want opportunities for career development. They want to work for a place that has a great reputation, that may be doing things for the environment or their community that is meaningful. So I would say when you think about your engagement levers, like it may be compensation, it may be one of all of the things that I just mentioned. Take a poll around where you're satisfied and what your satisfaction level is. Now, I say there's a lot of factors because there's one thing for us to be satisfied in our job or not. And then there's what opportunities there are out there externally. We happen to be in a space right now where there are plenty of opportunities, right? Talent is, there's a shortage of talent. There are more than enough opportunities, but it's not always that way. So in an environment like this, maybe you're slightly dissatisfied. You're like, you know what? I'm out of here, because you definitely have the option to do that. You can get out in the market and do it. And other times, opportunities may not be as plentiful. So you want to think about, like, really what can you do? Some people can step away and not have an impact to their lifestyle or their homes and taking care of their families. If you're like me, you need your job, so you stay where you are. And if there's not a lot of opportunity, then you look to make changes in the way that you can. So that's what I think about, like thinking about all those engagement levels. Compensation. Are you doing meaningful work? Do you work with people that you enjoy working with? Are you growing as far as like your career is concerned? Are you developing, learning new skills? Are you moving up if that's what you desired? Are you moving across if that's what you desire? All of those things should be considered. And then obviously home life. With everyone having a family, it's not only our personal preferences we have to consider, we also have to consider the impact to changing jobs. So just to think about, how do you approach changing a job? All of the things that we typically talk about feed into a lot of these things. When you have open dialogue, open communication, you talk about your career, likely you are engaging with others in your network, internally and externally. So utilizing your network, utilizing spaces like this where you have like-minded individuals and people with similar interests, potentially similar skills. They may be open because they see you on a platform like this to talk to you about opportunities and be able to help you. Talent Ready is absolutely a space. I mean, that's what our mission is, right? We want to connect people with opportunities and ways that they can upskill so that they're prepared whenever the opportunity comes available. So definitely utilize your network. Right now, again, jobs are plentiful. So LinkedIn is a primary space for searching for opportunities, not only when you just see job postings, but when you see what people are talking about, right? Trending topics, surveys that they may be putting out, opportunities to participate in volunteer efforts. Those can also lead into job opportunities. So if you find that it's time to leave, begin to tap into your network probably when you start to feel in your stomach, something's not quite right. And then look for a coach if you're able to afford one, or in some spaces they have free coaches so that you can invest in yourself and prepare for your job search. I think that's super important to be prepared for that search so that you build the confidence, especially if you're going through a phase where you've received critical feedback in a way that wasn't really healthy. That can have a really huge impact to your self-esteem and your confidence. So tap into your network, get yourself prepared, and then start getting out there. That's a long-winded answer. I feel like there's a lot of information in there, but hopefully you picked up some things in there.
It's thorough. I would just add, at the end of the day, have a good assessment on how your job is impacting your health. There are times where the stress at work, we deal with it so long and it ends up making us ill in one way or another. Like, this is very real. And so it's okay to say in those moments, you know what, that's enough. Let me see if I have other options, because the shit's not worth it. And I know we really live in a culture of grind it into the ground. Grind yourself into the ground, but just thinking futuristically and optimally, we would love that. Yes, the job and who you work with takes you outside of your comfort zone and it allows you to grow, but it shouldn't be killing you. And so just make a real honest assessment on how it's impacting your health and what options you have. I take your statement about networking as a way to find a new job, and I put it to the 10th power. Because even beyond job postings, sometimes you can get fast tracked by just knowing somebody inside for a job posting you see online. That has definitely happened to me, where I connect with somebody who knows somebody, and then I don't even have to apply, right? I don't even have to fill out the first form. So networking is super important in every job as a professional. Someone once gave me a good piece of feedback that just because you have a job or you just landed a job, you're always open and available to see what's out there. Don't ever stop kind of networking or taking calls just to see what's out there and brush up on your skills, staying kind of ready, especially in these times where what used to be 5 years at an organization is now 2 years at an organization. So times are changing. And so that those are just the pieces I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. We had a career role model spotlight 2 months ago, and one of our guests, she said, that sign on the LinkedIn where it says open to work. Now she is gainfully employed, and she's like, I'm always open to work, because you do kind of have to keep your skills up to date and your network fresh, right? And it does, especially for moms. I've worked with diversity programs where we offer opportunities for moms to kind of come back in and brush up on their skills, because they go take care of families and then they try to re-enter the workplace, and it's just uncomfortable. So keeping yourself in a position of being ready, I absolutely agree with that. you said something else that stuck with me, which is we kind of grind things into the ground. One of the things that I truly believe in is what is meant to be will be. Everything is as it should be. And when you are in a position, especially when you're getting feedback, and this is kind of like this is the horrible side of things that can happen in the workplace. But when you're getting feedback that just doesn't feel um, like it is steeped in something that is accurate, fair, um, that has integrity behind it, like your gut is probably right. If you've done all the things that I mentioned, which is take a step back, do a self-assessment, really consider whether or not the feedback is accurate or not. If you find that it's not accurate and you have a manager who is kind of just plucking at you, constantly plucking at you, let it go, right? And in some cases, you probably are already on your way out the door. You don't know it yet. And your manager is sitting there kind of creating this space, which is a really horrible situation to be in. But managers are humans too. And I find that sometimes they are very emotionally charged. And when you are in positions of getting critical feedback, they want to do well. They feel like you're not doing well on their team. You're bringing stats down, whatever it is. It might be time to go. So you really do have to take that self-assessment and think about, is this the right thing? Do I want to sacrifice my health? Because it is one of those things that you can make yourself sick. One conversation around critical feedback ignites anxiety. In some cases, anxiety beyond belief. So just to have that on multiple occasions, over time, over months, is definitely not healthy. So I know it's not always an option to just step away, but after these past 2+ years, I find that we have to prioritize ourselves and our health. So if you can't step away right away, make sure you got an action plan that includes reaching out to your network and starting to get in position to get out of there.
Absolutely. I wish we could say, yep. Yep, you all managers don't work from a space of ego or abusing their power, but we all know that's not true. And
Yeah.
so our discussions are really about, well, what do we do now? How do we can't just snap our fingers and change the system. We can activate and push back in ways that we're able to individually, but what other ways can we empower ourselves? And that's where this dialogue comes in, of like changing your mindset, focusing on what's important. What are your goals? Getting feedback. If you don't agree or align with how things are going, or the space in place where things are coming from, how they're working, make sure you have resources, right? You're tapped in, you're plugged in, you're sharpened, ready to go, ready to see what your options are at all times, period. So with that said, any final thoughts, Tani, before we close out?
So just a quick recap, all the things we talked about. Feedback, consider it a gift. Keeping open communication, open dialogue is really important. In order to gain some control, try to ask for feedback in order to feel a bit more comfortable. When you're getting feedback, use it for your development. Use it to hold yourself accountable. And if you disagree, take a true self-assessment, take a step back, and then try to have open dialogue with your manager. In cases where you feel like you're in a position where you know something's wrong, right? So you're in a space where manager is more led by their ego versus wanting to truly develop you, it might be time to make a change. And when your engagement factors like satisfaction with compensation or satisfaction with the type of work you're doing, the people you're working with, the reputation your company has, when those things are at a low and opportunities externally are plentiful, like right now, it might be time to make a change. So tap into your network, look into getting a coach so that you can get prepared for your job search and go out there and find what will make you more satisfied.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that recap. Well, moms, let us know what you think. What's your perspective when it comes to feedback? How has it gone for you? Where are you on this kind of spectrum of readiness to receive feedback? And what other questions do you have from us as as it relates to when to leave a job, how to find new ones. And if you have any gems from your own experience that you like to share, please do so in the comments. We appreciate your time and we appreciate you listening in. Let's win. Bye.